On March 20th, 2010, an eruption starts in Iceland.
This could potentially go on for many months.
It will soon create havoc around the world.
We were lucky to survive.
It's producing huge quantities of volcanic ash. It's being transported all across the North Atlantic Ocean and reaching the continent of Europe.
Local authorities decided to evacuate the area.
This is a totally different beast.
This volcano is just not letting off.
The world has not seen such widespread business and travel disruptions since World War II. For people who had never given the small country of Iceland a thought, the natural forces of that country suddenly becomes their focus of life and activities.
There's a volcano still erupting in Iceland. It's expected to disrupt half of all the flights across the Atlantic tomorrow.
At the moment, closed is Ireland, the United Kingdom, Belgium, Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, Denmark.
It feels like the world comes to a standstill.
And we're just getting news that restrictions on all flights across the UK-controlled airspace are going to remain in place.
It is the largest grounding of airline flights we've seen since 9/11.
It's going to be a disaster for the business.
To our knowledge, this sort of event has never happened on the same extent in the European theatre before. The volcano has been erupting now for almost 48 hours.
The volcano eruption out of Iceland, believe it or not, now includes a health warning for those on the ground all over Europe.
The country of Iceland, an island tucked away in the North Atlantic, suddenly finds itself in the world's focus. A few weeks earlier, life in Iceland's capital city, Reykjavik, looks normal. People here know they live on one of Earth's geological hotspots. At the country's meteorological office, people monitor the daily earthquakes, a constant rumbling inside the Earth. In early March 2010, the seismic data starts to tell a new story. Clusters of some 300 earthquakes appear in one concentrated area to the south, near and under two of the major glaciers. They are still small, reaching only 1 or 2 on the Richter scale. Satellite radar images show the Earth's crust in the area is heaving like waves on the ocean. It's not moving by much, only fractions of an inch, but it's a clear sign of pressure mounting. Magma from deep inside the Earth is on the move. Where it will go is anyone's guess, but a pressure like this must be relieved somewhere. In the following days, the earthquakes intensify. The mountain under the Eyjafjalla Glacier is definitely under stress. In the evening of March 20th, the guessing game is over. The authorities are not willing to take any chances. They quickly assemble scientists and rescue personnel. Magnus Tumi Gudmundsson is the government's volcano advisor.
Well, it's a moderate eruption, but we don't know how long it will be, we don't know how it will develop.
He now takes the lead in trying to understand the situation.
Well, we are heading for a flight over the eruption site and inspect what's happening there now.
The airplane is a brand new addition to the Icelandic Coast Guard's arsenal, equipped with cameras and instrumentation that helps them see where the naked eye cannot. It's really a flying scientific laboratory. Meanwhile, as the Coast Guard plane takes off from Reykjavik Airport, our film crew documenting the events tries to reach the eruption over the glacier.
The purpose of this trip was to try to be the first film crew on the eruption site. In the morning, the weather was pretty good when we was heading out.
Off we go.
Driving on glaciers is a popular activity in Iceland. Letting air out of the tires creates a wider surface area which gives better traction.
We headed up to this glacier area because the eruption is placed between two glaciers, and it went well in the beginning.
Crossing the frozen rivers quickly presents an initial hindrance. They can't see the ice and judge its thickness. From a distance, they see a gas cloud rising over the landscape. Volcanic gases can be very poisonous, but luckily, the wind takes the gases in the opposite direction. On board the Coast Guard plane, the scientists have a multitude of new technology. Heat-seeking cameras see through clouds and reveal things under the glaciers and even beneath the Earth's surface. Initial images show that the fissure in the Earth's crust is still growing. The eruption has just started. The IcelandVolcano is one of the smallest of Iceland's 22 active volcanoes, and a temporary outflow of lava doesn't necessarily present much of a problem. Up on the glacier, however, problems mount. The heavy particles thrown out by the eruption blackens the snow and challenges the cameraman. Unfortunately, particles are also sucked into the car's engines, which call for drastic but rather inventive measures to keep going. The mountain is one of the highest mountains in Iceland, and the glacier caps the mountain's top. Quick and dramatic changes in weather are common. The wind shifts, and poisonous gases are now coming the way of the crew. It's time to get off the mountain.
Suddenly we went into a heavy stormy weather.
Visibility is zero, a total whiteout.
When we turned back, we decided to get one person in the front of the vehicle to lead us because we didn't trust the GPS.
It's getting dangerous, with hidden crevasses in the glacier all around them.
Suddenly, one of the vehicles fell into a crack.
They are lucky the car didn't go down totally. The glacier can easily swallow a car and people.
After the Super Jeep pulled up the other Jeep, it took us nearly about 12 hours to get only a few miles, and we were lucky to survive.
A rift in the Earth's crust has opened between the glaciers. Molten rock and magma pour into the landscape. In the first hours of the eruption, the rift on the Earth's crust grows, and slowly but surely, the eruption starts to build a new mountain. It looks dramatic, but on a historical scale in Iceland, the eruption is only a footnote. The initial spouts of magma have now turned into rivers of lava flowing down the mountain. As the lava cools, it forms the new landscape with volcanic rock formations. At this stage, the eruption looks benign, just an additional spot of beauty in the high mountains of Iceland. Soon, the locals flock to the area, and thousands of visitors enjoy the spectacular scenery. No doubt, with gas and solid rock spewed out by the volcano, this is a dangerous theater. But people seem willing to take risks to be part of the geological extravagance. For many, this is once in a lifetime. The die-hard volcano chasers find this spot to be the perfect camping site. They are definitely playing the geological form of Russian roulette. There is absolutely no way of telling where the next eruption will strike with deadly force. The film crew makes it safely off the mountain, but it was a close call. Others are not so lucky. The next day, the rescue helicopters are called into action. 3 people are missing after taking off to visit the eruption. It's a vast area to search. It really looks like the lava flow is slowing down. The eruption has built a new mountain, 250 feet high, and it's closed in on itself. Only steam comes from the fissure. Even if the volcano doesn't seem to present a deadly force at this moment, it still claims its first victims. 2 people are found dead, helplessly lost in the wilderness. This is a land where natural forces battle for supremacy. The land was formed in a geological cataclysm, and the ordeal is still going on. Iceland is a work in progress. It's all about forces. Creation and destruction are seen in the same instant. On a planet where geological times are measured in hundreds and thousands of millions of years, the geological clock in Iceland ticks at a different rhythm. Iceland is one of the youngest land masses on Earth, a global youngster, only 16 million years old, and still growing. Stretching across the entire landmass is a rift that splits the country in 2. It's the demarcation line between 2 continental plates. On one side, half the country sits on the North American plate, and on the other side, the landmass is connected to the Euro-Asian plate, and they are drifting apart. It may not sound like much, but drifting apart by almost an inch per year makes all the difference for Iceland. It's not an even and gradual process. Movements can be larger and always accompanied by earthquakes. The rift doesn't stop at the shore. It continues into the sea, forming the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, stretching down the entire Atlantic Ocean. This is the reason why volcanoes erupt and the land is puffing and steaming. The land is torn apart. It's an ongoing process forming Iceland's fiery and violent history. Iceland's deadliest eruption occurred on June 8, 1783. Fire fountains reached almost a mile into the air. Lakagígar had opened its crater to the underworld. It was a gigantic eruption, the second largest in recorded history on this planet. It continued for 8 months. The flow of lava was almost as great as the flow of water in the Amazon River today, and it destroyed everything in its path. Hundreds of thousands of sheep and cattle perished from the poisonous gases. In the ensuing famine, as much as 1/4 of Iceland's people died. The eruption was of a global scale, with weather and climate changing for years. Freezing winters and violent weather resulted in loss of crops and famine. Thousands of people died in mainland Europe after inhaling poisonous volcanic gases. Some even claim that it set in course social upheaval that resulted in the French Revolution. It's the 13th of April. Earthquakes continue to shake the earth, and authorities have reasons to keep a watchful eye on the area. To the naked eye, all seems calm. Clouds descend over the mountains, cutting vertical visibility to almost zero. Thanks to the state-of-the-art equipment on board the Coast Guard's airplane, they are, however, able to see through the clouds. And what they see gives cause for concern. They can see there's a depression in the glacier's surface. From history, they know what this means. This is what the neighboring Vatnajökull glacier looked like in 1996. The glacier is collapsing. Heat from underneath is melting the ice. Now they see depressions in the Eyjafjalla glacier. For the Coast Guard, it means only one thing. A fissure has opened under the ice. An eruption is imminent. Unlike the first eruptions, this one is explosive. When the hot magma meets the glacier ice and cold meltwater, the result is the most violent kind of volcanic eruption. The plume shoots out of the volcano at almost the speed of sound, ejecting the ash particles at a speed of 670 miles an hour to a height of 5 miles. Gas inside the particles expands with explosive speed, helping to lift the particles into the stratosphere. The fissure under the ice quickly grows to more than a mile. Heavier particles in the plume rain down close to the volcano. Initially, the volcano emits 700 tons of ash per second. In the first 3 days, the volume of ash is almost 5 billion cubic feet. On the lee side of the mountain, there's a deceiving tranquil beauty. Downwind, another story is brewing. A rescue plan is set in motion. People have to evacuate their homes immediately. Schools turn into rescue centers, and worried locals and tourists who happen to be in the area can now only wait and see. The fate of their homes, farms, and livelihood are now in the hands of the forces of nature.
It was around 4 o'clock last night. The local authorities decided to evacuate the area that is closest to the volcano or the danger zone. And they did that by calling via phone everybody in the area. To start by calling the people that are closest to danger and start by evacuating them to the nearest school or mass care center. During the night, there came around 489 people to this mass care center here.
First I thought it was a joke, and then I was afraid because of the glacier melting. I don't know really what happened, what's the danger really.
Seen from space, through the curtain of ash and clouds, the three craters in the glacier send a terrifying message. Where some see danger, others see opportunities. For geologists and volcanologists, this is a field day. Haraldur Sigurdsson, a world-leading authority on volcanism, immediately spots the danger of this eruption.
This eruption is a purely explosive eruption, whereas the eruption that was going on here a week ago was just a lava flow, and it was a peaceful, quiet, safe eruption. This is a totally different beast. It's producing huge quantities of volcanic ash. You can see it squirting up into the atmosphere, and the problem we have is that this ash is being transported all across the North Atlantic Ocean and reaching the continent of Europe.
The local authorities act quickly.
We have closed off the area around the volcano, a 10-mile radius, no-fly zone, up to 20,000 feet. Then we have a larger area that is closed off to all instrument flights, on their way across the Atlantic to America. This area is definitely going to become larger with time. The forecast is that it will extend all the way to Norway. But this could change in the next few days due to the wind direction, turning south. It's a real possibility that the North Atlantic route could be closed off to all air traffic from Europe to America.
All the flight traffic over the North Atlantic is quickly rerouted further to the south. But no doubt a scary scenario is looming.
The first eruption to the east of us started with a basaltic magma. Magma is a molten liquid rock that comes out of the earth. That was basaltic. This eruption that started just a couple of days ago has a totally different magma chemistry. It's called andesite. This magma potentially has much more gas in it. It's more explosive, and it comes from a shallower level in the earth. The fact that we're having andesite magma coming out of this volcano with a lot of gas is quite worrying, because it might mean that there'll be more continued ash production because of the gases in this magma. We have really no idea how long this eruption might go on. The last eruption in this volcano was in 1821, and it lasted 1.5 years. This could potentially go on for many months. Fallout of the ash. We're about 20 kilometers from the volcano right now, and the ash is charging all of the air here. It's very, very fine dust. It's almost like flour, except it's dark gray or almost black. We really don't know the chemistry of this ash, and it's important to find out the chemistry so we can determine what type of magma is coming out of the volcano, and that might tell us something about the style of activity in the next few days.
Back at the Reykjavik University, Bergur Sigfússon gets a chance to analyze the first ash samples.
Now I'm looking at the fragmented ash, and I can see that it's very fragmented, and that's a result of the intense reactions between the ash and the glacial meltwater, and creates much smaller particles which can be dispersed by far longer distances. The difference of this eruption, for example, compared to the other eruption, this has higher gas content. Because of the gas, it lifts the plume higher, and therefore is able to sustain more tephra coming out of the volcano. And depending on the size of the eruption, it can at least cover the northern hemisphere.
Under the microscope, the dangerous characteristics of the ash particles becomes clear. The combination of heat and cooling ice water turned magma into a powdery mixture of extremely sharp glass-like particles. With structures like these, it's easy to understand the abrasive power of the particles. Running into a wall of ash is like being sandblasted. And that's what makes the volcanic ash so dangerous to aviation. Sucked into the jet engine of an airplane, these particles create havoc. An engine like this combusts 5 tons of air every second, a capacity enough to empty Madison Square Garden in 30 seconds. The air is transported between the blades of the turbine, and the ensuing jet stream is what propels the airplane forward. In the hot engine, the particles from the eruption melt into a glass-like glaze that coats many of the engine components, rendering sensors, fuel nozzles, and air filters useless. History shows this creates a potentially deadly situation. In 1982, British Airways Flight 9, en route to Australia, unwittingly passes through the ash cloud from a volcanic eruption in Indonesia. Through the window, passengers see flames from the engines and an eerie glow all around the airplane. Inside the cabin, what looks like smoke fills the air. The plane drops like a stone from the sky with a total loss of power. A disaster's looming. Suddenly, at a much lower altitude, all engines restart successfully, and the crew brings all passengers to safety after a miraculous recovery and landing. Investigators studying the plane and its engines are shocked at the damage. The plane's exterior and engine fan blades are badly scored, and the inside of the engine is covered in thick layers of sticky dust and even rocks formed from the melting ash. Examination of the engines revealed that only an amazing combination of luck and natural circumstances saved this flight from disaster. From its location on Iceland's south coast, the IcelandVolcano continues to spew out ash. Reaching the jet stream above Iceland, the ash plume quickly moves towards continental Europe.
The magnitude of this disaster almost defies description. The cloud of volcanic gas that blasted from a volcano in Iceland earlier this week forced aviation officials to cancel 16,000 European flights today alone.
I cannot say whether it's an overreaction, underreaction. I think everybody is working in the interest of safety. Expected tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock, to cover the northern part of France, extending over as far east, covering Frankfurt, most of northern Germany.
From Iceland, as we mentioned, the volcanic ash has crippled air travel in virtually every corner of the globe, leaving air travelers stranded, frustrated, and desperately wanting to go home.
As voices are raised in Europe and the debate intensifies around the world, the demeanor of the people in Iceland offers a stark contrast. With stoic composure, they hardly express panic. But the ash sure is a nuisance. The Icelandic horses and sheep normally stay on the outside, even through cold winter months. Now in the early spring, they can start to feed on new grass. But the ash clouds, composed of poisonous chemicals like fluorides, blanket the new growth. Livestock that eat in pastures contaminated with ash can suffer and die from gastrointestinal blockages. For the farmers, there is an urgency to get the animals away from polluted pastures.
Oh, we're just fixing up the house so we can put some animals in there.
What? Why?
Why? We filled every houses with animals that we usually have outside. So now we have to use every space we can to get more animals inside.
Aware of the risks, this milk and cattle farmer doesn't seem to think the situation is catastrophic.
We've got our hay safely sealed. It keeps the ash out. The most important thing is to feed the animals more frequently. Luckily, we have a well here that supplies us with fresh drinking water, and it seems to be fine.
I really like it here. I've always known that there's a volcano underneath the glacier which could erupt. I've never been scared of that, and not even now that the volcano has started erupting. I don't feel scared, at least not yet. We just have to take one day at a time. And that's it.
Some think that an ash layer less than 4 inches in depth can revitalize the land as nutrients are washed out of the particles. That's the positive side of the eruption. But if it goes on for a long time, the odds are stacked against the farmers in this area, especially if water sources get contaminated and the ash layer turns into cement-like rock on the land.
We are about 5 kilometers from the crater of the volcano, and this is the ash that is generated by the explosive activity of the volcanic eruption. It's covering everything, covering the roofs of the farmhouses, leading to collapse of the roofs. It's about 3 or 4 inches thick here on the roof, and it is causing a major problem for the farmers here because it is stopping the grazing of the farm animals, and it's going to be a big destruction for the farmers here. It's a serious problem. It's a very fine ash, and this is the ash that is being transported all the way across the North Atlantic Ocean to Europe.
If the locals are not overly worried, the authorities take the situation seriously.
We'll be watching closely what's happening with the volcano. It's been happening very fast. Our scientists went up there earlier in the morning in an airplane to assess the situation. And when they came there, they saw only one crater in the ice cap. But now there's a 2-kilometer wide crack, and the volcano is active on that crack. So things are happening very fast at the moment.
The Prime Minister has arrived at the Joint Rescue and Coordination Center, where she has assembled scientists and rescue personnel. Their primary concern is not the ash. Chief Inspector Ragnvaldur Olafsson knows there are other problems in store for the Icelandic people.
The volcano is very active, and also the glacier is melting very fast, so we have a lot of flooding in the area.
The prediction quickly becomes reality as the melting glacier adds more than 4,200 cubic feet of water into the river every second. Nothing stops the waters as braided rivers rush over the broad coastal plain. The situation is made worse when surging meltwater from the volcano is added to the normal seasonal runoff from the area's glaciers. Circling all of Iceland, the Route 1 highway is the only road connecting towns and villages along the coast. It stands no chance against the water's destructive onslaught. In a futile attempt to save the bridges, workers cut several holes in the road bank. Water rushing in a new direction quickly devours more and more of the levees. The road, once a lifeline, is now broken and useless. The flood is bad, but people in Iceland know it can get worse. In 1996, the Vatnajökull glacier suddenly collapsed. The volcano had erupted under the ice, and quickly the hot lava melted the glacier from underneath. The subsequent flooding was dramatic, and when it peaked, 1.5 million cubic feet per second was flushed from underneath the glacier. That's more than the flow of the mighty Mississippi. The water pushed blocks of ice as big as apartment houses. Together with boulders the size of cars, they crushed everything in their path. The situation now is not as bad as in 1996, but still bad enough, as a second flood wave hits the ring road. Searching along the road, police make sure no one is stranded in a dangerous place. The flooding comes in waves, and each time it deposits the ice torn from the glacier. The beauty of the ice cannot distract from the danger the flooding poses. Haraldur Sigurdsson and the film crew get stuck too when the road is washed away.
We're here on the east side of the river, and there was a flood that came down here just a minute ago, and the bridge is out.
I think our only chance is to try and see if the old bridge is still working.
The policeman says it's okay to try the bridge, but only one car at a time. The ice-filled water pounds the old bridge, which is not maintained for heavy traffic.
There's the old bridge.
There's the old bridge.
They decide to risk it.
Do you think it'll hold?
Let's try. We go slow. It's amazing. Built in the 1930s.
Yeah, it still holds. We're good.
The ash downfall is getting worse. Earlier, most of the ash blew to Europe. Suddenly, it falls right below the volcano itself. Film director Jóhann Sigfússon normally finds his way around this part of Iceland without a problem. Today, it's very different.
Yeah, we're driving here with the crew on the second week of the eruption, of the big eruption in Eyjafjallajökull, and we are just entering the ash cloud at the moment. And we were told that there's a woman on a small farm up ahead, and we're going to try to interview her. But the situation is, as you can see, it's dark as night, and it's 12 o'clock in the midday. So we have some problems with our cars because the air filters and the air filter intakes are jamming and filling up with ash. So we have to clean our filters every couple of hours.
The film crew is enveloped in the ash cloud.
What we've got to do now is we're running out of gas, and we're totally lost. The GPS, there's something we can't get a decent signal, but I think I saw out there in the dark the farm, so that's our last chance to try to get this. Otherwise we've got to head back because we're running out of gas, and this volcano is just not letting off. It's just really difficult here, and now if you look, it's just pitch black and it's really difficult to see anything, but I think I can see some lights up ahead. This is basically the place we've been looking for. Og haltu bóminni svolítið meira próf. Svona. Svona. Ok. Það er bara eitthvað góð. Já, taktu bara, þú veist, eitthvað svona. Okay. Well, We reached the house. It's behind us here. I hope you can see it. But this is just, the volcano is right up here, and everything is covered with ash. It's about 10, 15 centimeters. Everything's covered. And it's really hard on the eyes. But the light is unbelievable. These lighting conditions are just, I've never seen anything like it. And we're just gonna knock on the door and see if anybody's at home, but it looks completely dead here. There's nothing, there's no life, there's no sound, there's nothing. The only stuff we can hear are some explosions up on the glacier.
It was terrible here on Sunday. The cloud came all over us. We couldn't see before our hands. If we put it out, we couldn't see it. And it was darker than in the day. It's much better today, even though it's not good. As you can see, life goes on. These two, they were born this morning. And this one, her name is Ash. She has the color for it.
Well, we tried to get her to go with us, but she wants to stay, and with her small lambs, yeah, some spirit she's got, I think. But now we're going to head back, and we're driving in this cloud, and it's really getting worse. And we really want to get back, also because we're running really low on fuel.
In all the gloominess under the cloud, it's hard not to be fascinated by the lightning caused by static electricity from ash particles rubbing against each other. As the airports in Europe slowly open after days of closure, people elsewhere perhaps stop worrying about the effects of the erupting volcano. People in Iceland, however, will have to live with the effects for a much longer time. The eruption is still going on at the levels it had from the beginning. Magma is still pouring out, creating large lava streams. Ash is still thrown into the air, but with less explosive ferocity than in the beginning. But what must be a concern for everyone around the world is a geological dance we can call the Icelandic two-step. These scientists are driving up on the Mýrdals Glacier, one of the largest glaciers in Iceland. And it sits on top of the Katla volcano, which is many times more powerful than the neighboring Eyjafjalla volcano. To make matters worse, the two volcanoes appear to be linked. The question is not if Katla will explode, but when. The series of events this time around started in a narrow area between the two glaciers. The larger ash plume eruption came from the crater under the Eyjafjalla glacier to the west. The Mýrdals Glacier to the east is much larger, and the volcano under the ice cap is of a totally different magnitude. If the Eyjafjalla eruption has been a problem, an eruption from Katla will be a catastrophe on a different scale.
Right next to Eyjafjallajökull is Katla volcano. It's a much bigger volcano, and its eruptions have traditionally followed on Eyjafjallajökull's eruptions. Katla's eruptions are truly explosive, and they produce a huge amount of ash fallout. Its eruption in the future will produce an effect on global aviation and could possibly cut out global telecommunications as well. So Katla is really the big problem.
This glacier has grown to a thickness of some 1,800 feet right in the middle of the Katla volcano. There's a dynamic force between the two, fire and ice, hot and cold. By placing a sensitive satellite measuring device, scientists can track the uplifting, which already amounts to almost an inch a year. Some 3 miles beneath their feet, a large chamber of magma is boiling, and pressure mounts under the glacier, lifting the rock upwards. Historically, Katla erupts violently every half-century or so. The last major eruption was in 1918, so a new catastrophe is overdue. But even more concerning is that historically, the last several times the Eyjafjallajökull volcano has erupted, it has also triggered Katla to explode. Will recent eruptions set off a deadly two-step of enormous proportions? If so, the resulting impact on global commerce, health, and people's lives might be felt for months or more. What the volcanoes in Iceland have in store for the world is unpredictable and anybody's guess. But the landscape of Iceland bears the scars of many and regular eruptions. Many have caused severe global effects. As the Earth continues to rumble under the beautiful Icelandic landscape, the bomb is armed, the fuse is lit.